Hi, everybody. I'm Norm Byers with Genesis Church, and today we're going to have a panel here, and we want to offer parents some thoughts and strategies for having kids at home. So many parents in our community and around the world are in the challenging situation of facing some significant stressors and at the same time having the kiddos at home. With me today to discuss this topic is Cal Prinz. Thank you, Cal, for being with us. He is the principal of Central Elementary here in Petoskey, 32 years in education, and has raised several kids. Shelly Brantley is a mother of 4 who has homeschooled her children. Thank you, Shelly, for being with us. And Sandy Lee, the director of Genesis Kids, and also a mother of 4. Again, thank you for joining in this important discussion. You know, today we just want to offer some help, some thoughts, some strategies for having kids at home. So I want to start with you, Cal. First of all, let's go big picture here. The kids are at home and it's crazy. Where do you start?
All right, good question, Norm. I would say one of the first things to do is take a deep breath and relax. You don't have to have everything figured out. This is uncharted territory for all of us. And so don't put the extra stress of having everything perfect. But having said that, I would say creating some type of routine or schedule which is surrounded by love and support for your kids is super important. And that schedule and routine could include a number of things. There could be an educational component. There could be exercise and getting outside. There could be a, family time component in there, playing games, going for walks together, just a number of things, but create that type of overall structure of time. And then I would say also an important part of that is allowing some unstructured time to allow kids to explore, to create, to have some downtime, because this is really an opportunity where we live over-structured or over-scheduled lives. To have some of that downtime, we're afforded that now. So there's some things that you could do within that as well.
So, Cal, you're talking about here's our new normal. Now bringing some routine to it, some structure to it. That's kind of what you're saying. That's what I'm hearing. And a little bit earlier when we were talking, you had mentioned that, structure is love. The two do go together. And so I thought that was a really helpful idea here as we try to press into this. Let me go to Shelly. Shelly, you're you're a pro at this. You've had kids at home, homeschooling them at different times. What have you done just in this event, this time, to bring some structure to your family?
So my what I do now looks a little bit more like what we would do in the summertime, where we don't have any real planned educational activities, so we need to create structure, as Cal said. And that kind of starts with just getting up and getting ready for the day, having some either time limits or tasks, such as read for an hour, do a math worksheet, or play a math game online, 30 minutes of physical activity, some other educational, like science or art or a foreign language, or something that is by choice what they would like to do, some kind of spiritual, like right now media. There are some great kids on there. Game time, just and to reward their accomplishments, their tasks completed with some of their favorite things.
Hey, thanks for the plug for Right Now Media. We hope people are able to utilize that. The church is paying for it, so that's great. And Shelley, how important is a time element to these things, like get up by X time, take a shower, reading for 30 minutes? How important is the time allotment for that?
I think it's pretty important, not that everyone needs to do 30 minutes, but that you have something set. It's different depending on the child's age and the activity that they do. So if it's something that creates a lot of brain activity and a lot of work, it would need less time. But something that's easy and maybe more, or of course if they're older they can handle a longer learning time than someone who's younger. But I think it's really important to have either a task accomplished or a time limit to help them know that they're done.
And it's really contextualized too to the kid and who they are. It's not a one size fits all, and it's more of a, we'll talk about this a little later, we're training each of these kids in this sense. And I want to move on to Sandy here. Sandy, we're developing routines, we're, new routines, the new normal, we're developing structures. What do you think that parents, from your perspective, should be striving for in their new schedule, their new routine with their kids?
Well, I think, about that routine, I think one of the biggest things a parent or a caregiver can do is to really focus on that time with their child, or that connectedness time with their child. It can be any of those things that Shelley and Cal mentioned. It doesn't have to be a set family time. You can cook a meal with your child, or do a chore with your child, take a walk with your child. But there's so many studies that talk about the benefits of the parent-child relationship for our kids as a whole, their whole being. And we struggle, if we're honest, we struggle throughout the year to find times to really connect with them sometimes. So if we can look at this time different, we can, it's an opportunity to really center in and hone on those relationships. And in my experience, when I take the time to pour into my kids individually, it shows in how they treat others, how they respond to the rest of their day. It's well worth it.
Thank you for that, Sandy. It's a stressful time. There's uncertainty, and yet, as we've been encouraged to do, is to be present with our kids. There is anxiety about the future, and there's a time and a place to think about that, but having that time of being present and capitalizing on this time that we have to connect with our kids. I thank you so much for that. Cal, I wanted to go back to you and something you mentioned earlier about creativity, and how that is really a huge part of this, and how to get kids kind of operating in in their imagination instead of, otherwise. And what did you mean by that?
So I was joking with you a little bit about if you've ever gone camping with your kids. Typically the first day or two, they're all, I'm bored, and they don't know what to do. And if you allow that boredom and that free time, just allow it, before you know it, what you start seeing are kids that are designing, creating, exploring, discovering new things. And I think this is a gift that we have and our kids have, to be able to tap into some of that creativeness and that self-discovery and things like that. Everything doesn't have to be scheduled to a T or overscheduled. That schedules are important, but allowing some of that downtime and that boredom to allow for creativity to seep in would be awesome.
That's excellent. Yeah. Shelley, what from your thoughts on and all of our thoughts on this, actually, what can kind of sideline creativity? What Cal's talking about, kind of that little bit of tension of, oh, there's nothing to do, and now we got to kind of discover things on our own. What what's something that can sideline that?
I hate to say it, but media is a great creativity killer. Media being video games, television watching, social media. Um, Although there are a few social media applications that encourage creativity, but I would suggest just pushing those media times a little later in the day after they've had a chance to be creative. Because it's hard to switch gears and get creative after you've already put a lot of your time into media and non-creative activities.
You're kind of talking about like the food pyramid, aren't you? You know, like this is the fats and desserts, right? Is that what you're talking about?
For sure. And I would say, though, media that is educational, I would give a lot more flexibility to. And media that is connecting, I would also give a little more flexibility to. So if they're playing a game, a video game with their brother, and they're laughing and talking, that's very different than sitting and playing alone. So being flexible with that media time is good.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So you're not saying no games, no social media. You're just saying in the right kind of context, possibly as a reward, you know, later in the day after other more productive things have been done. Yeah. Beautiful. Sandy, I want, we're going to kind of heading on the wrapping this up I just want to just acknowledge and empathize with the people that are just paralyzed by this. They're paralyzed by what to do. You know, they're not used to having their kids at home. They're used to them going to school, and maybe they don't have much structure. They just haven't had it for whatever, you know, whatever it's worth. They just haven't. What do you think from your perspective? What's one step that would be a real doable step for someone to do?
All right. Yeah, I think it can be very overwhelming, and we're not all experts at that. But I think, you know, what Shelley and Cal have said about finding some routine, and it can be simple. If you add, you know, maybe you're just adding the morning or just the afternoon, or maybe you're just adding one thing, but pick one thing and stick with it. Be consistent in you know, enforcing it or following through with it, but give it some time to play out in your family. Kids are going to adapt. They do. They're elastic, and they're better adapters than we give them credit for. So pick something and stick with it. And I think that's the best way to get started.
Yeah. So I love what you're saying. It's like, go for something and then don't back off on it. Don't do too much where you find yourself not sticking with it. And I'm going to actually, in the resources, I'm going to put a podcast. It's called Atomic Habits, really helpful on just figuring out how to start a habit, start it small, but be committed to it. So that's something that will be there. Cal, what are your thoughts? One step parents could take.
I like what you said, Norm, in saying that when you're making a change, it takes one step at a time. So otherwise it seems overwhelming. And one thought or idea, if you wanted to take a step, is I do know that Petoskey Public Schools on our district website, under coronavirus updates, if you click on that, there are a number of great learning sources or websites for kids to use at home. And then I think I do know that our teachers are going to be creating learning management systems coming up here. So that's all going to be on the district website. So that's a great spot to start to find some of those educational resources. And then one other thought I did have that I wrote down is kids are learning from us and how we deal with unexpected change. And sometimes we forget that. The kids are watching us. And so how you are reacting to these changes, how you're responding, could either be a great learning for your kids or not so great. So here's an opportunity to make it a great learning experience.
Thank you. My kids are a little older, 18, 20, and 22. and we kind of reinstituted the dinner at the table, and devotion, family devotions, and just kind of sharing from your day. We try to do non-coronavirus news at the table, like something different. Tom Brady signed with the Bucks, but some things like that. Shelly, what about you? What's one step that you might suggest?
I think if I was going to add, just do one thing, I would say reading. There's so much in reading, and either having your kids read and or reading together as a family, or reading with one-on-one. Just add reading to your day, because there's just so much to be gained from that.
That's wonderful. I want to thank you so much, Cal, Shelly, and Sandy, for joining me in this video. Thank you so much. I want to take just a moment and share a verse from scripture from Proverbs 29:17. And it says there, it says exactly what we've been talking about here. It says, discipline your children and they will give you rest. They will give you delight in your heart. I love that passage, and the idea of discipline is it's not the punitive, punishing kind of discipline. It's the training, the practice of training your children. And that's what this is really all about, setting some routines, some structures, kind of giving them the vegetables, the things that they need, and still letting them have some sweets and things like that. It's definitely hard, though. I know that. I remember that. And at my kid's age, I'm still reminded of that, how hard it is. But it's kind of that thing, pay me now or pay me later. And that verse promises rest if we do this. So I just want that for you, and I know our panel does too. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll post some resources here that you can use, and please share any comments or questions you may have. Peace to you all.